So again, the prefix poly means what? Many, more than one. Okay? So we're going to start off, instead of talking about polynomials, we're going to talk about what is a monomial. What does mono mean? Okay, a monomial. So a monomial can be a real number, a variable, or it can be a combination of those. And I'll give examples, okay? So a real number, a variable, or it could be a number and a variable, or you can even have more than one variable in a monomial. So some examples of monomials: 18 is a monomial. W is a monomial, so there's a number by itself, a variable by itself. Or some combination examples: negative 4x squared would be a monomial. 2.5xy cubed would be a monomial. Okay, a combination of a number and variables. So up until today, we have called these monomials, we've just called them terms. Okay, they're terms. And when we've talked about combining like terms, what we were really doing is combining monomials. Okay? All right, so each monomial has a degree. Degree of a monomial. When we're talking about a degree of a monomial, how we find that is we are going to add up any exponents of variables only. Okay, so the sum, adding, of exponents with variable bases. The degree of a monomial is the sum of exponents with variable bases. So not exponents that are on numbers, only exponents that are on variables. And we'll do some examples of that. Our first example is the monomial 5x. So technically the 5 has an exponent of 1 and the x has an exponent of 1. But we are only looking at the variables, what the exponent is for the variable. And since 1 doesn't show up, we need to know that it's a 1. So the degree is 1. Here's another monomial, 6x cubed y squared. Technically the 6 has a 1 as an exponent, but again, we are not including the exponents for numbers. We are only looking at the variable exponents. So what is the degree for this monomial? 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. What would be the degree of this monomial? 0. Very good. Very good. So because this monomial 4 does not have any variables at all, then it wouldn't have a degree. All right? Any questions about that? All right, so now we're going to actually start talking about polynomials. Polynomials. Any guesses, now that you know what a monomial is, what a polynomial is going to be? Multiple what? Has multiple monomials, okay? So a polynomial is made up of monomials. So a polynomial is 2 or more monomials that are added together. or more monomials that are added together. So the question was, can they be subtracted? And my answer is yes, okay? Because you can technically write, let's just say I have the numbers 4 plus 2. I could also have 4 minus 2, or I could write that as 4 plus a negative 2. These two things mean the same, but this one is like the simplified version. So technically you are adding the opposite. That's how the integer rules say, okay? But you don't necessarily see that plus sign, okay? So I guess my answer is yes. But we just need to remember that when we're looking at our terms, that the sign in front of it goes with that. We'll practice that in a second. All right, so an example of a polynomial, 5x cubed plus 2xyz to the third power plus 7xy. So we can see that these monomials are separated by these plus signs. And there could be subtraction signs. So plus signs or subtraction signs are going to separate your monomials from each other. Okay? So how many monomials do we have? 3. So what would be a prefix for 3? Tri. So this would be called a trinomial. Okay? I know, lots of words here today. So you can have a degree of your polynomial as well. And the way that you find the degree of your polynomial, so again, degree of polynomial, it's going to be the largest, the monomial that has the largest degree is going to be the degree for the entire polynomial, okay? So the degree of largest monomial. So let's use this polynomial, this trinomial that we just wrote, and let's think about what is the degree of each one of these monomials. So this first monomial, 5x cubed, what's the degree of that? 3. What's the degree of this second one? Try again. So this has a 1, this has a 1, this has a 3. So 1 plus 1 plus 3 is 5. And what is the degree of the last one? 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. So the largest one is 5. So the degree of the polynomial is also 5. Does that make sense? All right. All right, so let's talk next about writing a polynomial in standard form. So when we write a polynomial in standard form, we want to do two things. The first thing that we want to make sure we've done is we want to combine any like terms. So again, combine like terms. How would you describe like terms to somebody? What are like terms? As far as algebra is concerned, what are like terms? Has to be the same exact variable and exponent. So you can't do an x squared and an x. Those are not like terms. X squared and x squared would be the same. X and x would be the same. X cubed and x cubed are the same. But you can't combine it just if it's the same letter. So it has to be the exact same variable and the exact same exponent. Okay? So combine like terms. And we also, this is something that we've done that before, right? When solving equations and stuff, isn't that something we always do, is combine like terms? Yes. Also, though, we are now going to order our terms, our final terms after we combine them. We're going to order them by degree. So the biggest degree to the smallest degree. So order by degree. Biggest to smallest. So I really don't think that you'll find, we're going to practice a little bit here, but I really don't think you'll find this too difficult because a lot of it is stuff that we've done before. We just haven't called it polynomials, and we haven't talked about degrees and that kind of stuff, okay? So let's write the polynomial 7x plus 3x cubed plus 5 plus x squared. Okay. So I know that you all are kind of like me. I like to, if I have to do two things, I kind of like to do them at the same time if I can. All right. So besides combining like terms, I'm going to be thinking about which one of these terms has the largest degree. 3x cubed, right, has the largest degree. So is there anything that I can combine with this? No. So it's by itself. You're right. None of them are like terms in this one. What would be next then? X squared. And then? And lastly? So we didn't have anything that we could combine, but we were able to put them in order from biggest to smallest by degree. Okay? Alright, something else that we want to talk about is a way that you could classify them. So we can classify them by degree. We can give them a name based on their degree, and we can also give them a name based on their amount of terms. So let's say that we have the number 6. What is the degree of 6? 0. So when the degree is 0, the name of that is going to be a constant. How many terms are here? So when it has one term, it's called a monomial. So again, we're kind of making a table here. See? Awesome. Let's say we have the number, or the polynomial 5x plus 9. What is the degree of this polynomial? 1. So the name for that, when the degree is 1, the name is linear. What have we talked about this year that have been linear, that have had that name in there? Linear equations. We've also had linear inequalities, and we were able to graph those. Okay? So this is an example of a linear monomial. How many terms are here? 2. What is the prefix for 2? Binomial. Just like a bicycle. This says 4x squared plus 7x plus 3. 4x squared plus 7x plus 3. How many, what's the degree of this polynomial? 2. There's only 2 exponents. This has a 2, this has a 1. So 2 is the biggest. The exponent on this is a 2. The exponent on this is a 1. So that's the largest. All right, when the degree is 2, it's called a quadratic. Now, we have not yet talked this year about it, but we will be quadratic equations. Have you ever heard that before? Linear equations we've talked a lot about. Quadratic equations we are going to talk about. That's when you have something to the second power in it, would be a quadratic equation. How many terms are here? 3, so that is a trinomial. I'm going to do one more. x to the third power. The degree of this is 3. Whoops, I don't really want to use that color. And that would be cubic. And it's a what type of polynomial? Monomial. There's only one. That's okay. Anything past that would just be 4th degree, 5th degree, 6th degree, 7th degree. Okay? On up. So 0, 1, 2, and 3 are the only ones that have different names. Again, once you get to the 4th degree, it's just 4th degree. Alright? Any of you black belts in here? Don't you do that? No, no one does that? Okay. Cool. Alright. If I asked you to classify this, I want you to put it in standard form. I want you to tell me what is the degree of the polynomial and give it its name. I want you to tell me what is the actual name of this polynomial. It's a polynomial, but what exactly type of polynomial is it? Okay? So again, put it in standard form. What is the degree of the polynomial? What degree name is that called? And how many monomials are there? Give it a name based on that. And then no, we're still not done. Order it, standard form, okay? And then classify it by degree. Tell me how many degrees it has. What's the degree of the polynomial? What name is that? And then tell me how many terms. Based on how many terms it has, what's its actual name? Alright, so there's standard form, right? What's the degree of this polynomial? 2. 2 is the highest degree. So the degree is 2. And when the degree is 2, look on your notes that you just wrote. What is that called? Quadratic. The degree of 2 is called a quadratic. Some of you are getting 2 confused with 2 terms. How many terms are here? 3 terms, so it's called a trinomial. Hold on, I have a question before yours, Emily. Where is the 3rd term? Here's 1 term, here's 2 terms, here's 3 terms. They're separated by the plus and minus signs. Emily, question. Just quadratic trinomial is fine. Yes? You have to rewrite it in standard form. That's part of it. And sometimes it'll be like more simplifying than this really was. Like this was just reordering it. Sometimes you will need to combine those terms. Sometimes you might need to distribute and then combine your like terms and then order it. So these are actually pretty easy. My pre-algebra actually was writing them in standard form today as well, and they had more complicated ones. But they didn't have to then do this last part. Not in one day anyway. But you all have really done this last part, so again, this shouldn't be that bad. We're going to add polynomials and we're going to subtract polynomials. Okay? All that is, it sounds like it's more than what we've done. It's just combining like terms. That's it. Okay? Sometimes they will give you the problem vertically. An example of a vertical problem, 4 over top of plus 2 equals 6. That's written vertically. Sometimes they will give it to you horizontally. 4 plus 2 equals 6. It's the same thing, right? It's just written in a different way. Some people like it vertically, some people like it horizontal. So if you see it written differently, which it will be written differently on your paper, don't freak out. No big deal. For instance, 4w minus 5 plus 9w plus 2. This is a binomial plus a binomial. So all you're doing is combining your like terms. These are like terms because they both have w's to the first power. And these are like terms because neither one of them have a variable. So we can combine those terms. What's 4w plus 9w? And what's negative 5 plus 2? And there it is. Now, seeing it horizontally, so personal preference. But again, we have two binomials. In my first binomial, I have an x squared, so I'm looking for other x squareds, and I have it. So I'm going to do 5 plus 15 and get my x squared. And then I also have constants. Because we only combine our exponents when we're multiplying, which we will tomorrow. When you combine like terms, you don't add your exponents, ever. Okay, we're only adding, this is like how you were saying apples and oranges. This is like 5 apples and 15 apples, so that gives us 20 apples. And this is 3 oranges and 2 oranges, so that gives me 5 oranges. Questions about this before I talk about our subtracting polynomials? That's our last thing, subtracting polynomials. All right, so, nope. You're just wasting more of your time by complaining right now because you're making me talk about it. And so when you subtract polynomials, it can be the same thing with vertical or horizontal. Now, when you do this, you need to, when we subtract, we have a subtraction sign, which subtraction signs and negative signs are the same thing. We have to distribute that negative sign before we do anything. I think these are easier to see when it's written out horizontally because that's what you're used to seeing. So for instance, if you don't want to write it down, then just pay attention if you think you know what you're doing. Okay, so we have a binomial minus a trinomial. But before I do anything, I need to distribute this minus sign. Meaning, I'm going to do a negative times a negative, which makes it a positive 2w cubed. A negative times a positive, which makes this a negative 4w squared. And a negative times a negative, which makes it a positive w. So you have to do that distributing first, and now you're combining like terms. So you're going to write it in standard form, so be thinking about what has the highest degree. Highest degree of all of these is 4, correct? Can anything combine with that? Nope. So that's your first part of your answer. Negative 6w to the 4th power. That's done. What's next? We have something to the 3rd power, right? A positive 2w to the 3rd power. Can anything combine with that? Nope. So plus 2w to the 3rd power. That's done. What's next? W squared minus 4w squared. Those get combined. Plus 1 minus 4 gives me negative 3w squared. Those are gone. Whoa. And plus w, and you're done. Questions? Alex has an actual question about this. You said you're confused? An actual question about this problem, not what we're doing after this problem. Yes. Isn't that how you normally distribute? You're not. Rachel. Yes, technically. I mean, you only want one sign in front of each term. So I'm not going to have like plus 2w cubed. You know what I'm saying? I'm making it just one symbol. Because right now I technically have two symbols, a minus sign and a negative. I'm making that into one plus sign. Any other questions about this problem?